Mr. Deputy Ambassador, it was almost a year ago where I interviewed your boss and in what became, as I read in Jane's book, an infamous interview where he talked about Australia's advocacy for a inquiry into the coronavirus pandemic could lead to China using trade to punish Australia. So we've seen that has come true in fruition, probably much further than what I anticipated when I wrote that interview up. We see also Australian Defence Department planning about the possibility of being dragged into a Taiwan crisis if there's issues there. We still have situations where Australian ministers can't get conversations, phone calls returned with their Chinese counterparts. I'm just wondering if you can give us an assessment of where the current state of the relationship is, given in particular it seems since the beginning of the year the trade sanctions that China has introduced against Australia has sort of died off. There hasn't been anything further since sort of December in that front. That suggests that perhaps the relationship has sort of reached a new equilibrium, very low, but we are at a rock bottom point. And where are we going in terms of getting conversations with ministers and dialogue opening and things like that?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the interview with my ambassador. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an oversimplified branding of what my ambassador said in your interview. I wonder whether it's you who coined the word or your editor come up with the idea. But our policy towards Australia has been consistent all the way. We have done nothing intentionally to hurt this relationship. And we've seen too many incidents over the past few years that China's interests have been hurt. I'll give you an idea about Huawei, because as far as we believe, the United States have mobilized the state power to suppress a particular Chinese company in order to prevent any challenges to its traditional business or technological dominance, which runs against market rules and professional or business ethics. So they go even so far as to framing and detaining senior executives. Such dirty tactics took place in the past for Alstom from France and also for Toshiba from Japan. I think it will happen again. So, but Australia has no glorious role in this regard. Remember, Australia was among the first to falsely accusing Huawei of possible security threat, data security threat. But up to now, there's not a single evidence have been presented to substantiate such a claim. And secondly, Australia was the first to ban Huawei into domestic telecommunication industry building. And then Australia even persuaded others to follow suit. So by doing so, I think Australia connived with the United States in a very unethical, illegal, immoral suppression of Chinese companies. It will happen to Chinese companies. Sometimes it will happen to other companies from emerging countries. But it's bewildered me because as far as I know, there's not a single Australia communication equipment company that's on the par with Huawei or any other internationally renowned company in terms of technological advancement and sophistication. And Australia ranked the second from the bottom in terms of market digitalization among OECD countries. And the broadband speed here is much slower than some of the developing countries. I wonder why your intelligence and security apparatus has the guts to claim that they know what the threat is posed by Huawei. I'd love to see an open debate between a Huawei engineer and a representative from your security and intelligence department to find out what could be a threat. And we already China proposed a global initiative on data security, which was welcomed by quite a number of Asia-Pacific and developing countries. But we failed to receive response from Australia, from the United States, because you know the tradition, you know the history. It was not only in the fiction, not in the movies, but in the real world. It was the United States, UK, Australia partially, that has a strong tradition of eavesdropping into others and dig nose into others' houses. So if you believe in this barbaric motto that's prevalent during Hellenistic age, the city-states or the medieval vassals in Europe, that either you devour the others or to be devoured. Just to do it. Don't try to pretend that you have the moral high ground. But the Huawei Australia company suffered a lot because of the unethical deeds by your government. Huawei lost 78% of the net profit in 2019 and 10% of the revenue. But look at the world. Huawei rose to 49th place in Fortune Global 500 back in 2019. And last year, in the first half, it registered a 13% growth of revenue and is now the largest smartphone producer in the world. And it is serving 3 billion people in 170 countries by 1,500 networks. So when Australia abandoned Huawei, the world embraced it. So
well, they must be very good phones because they're not returning Australian ministers' phone calls, are they? So when I asked about the bilateral relationship, I didn't ask about Huawei. So when is China and Australian relations going to get on a more diplomatic track?
So actually, let me finish the Huawei story. There's one interesting incident. One of your retired senior politicians claimed in his memoir that he's the one who killed former US President Donald Trump about the possible security breach, a security threat of Huawei. And I'd like very much to hear what Mr. Trump would say in the future and find out in this round of suppression by state power of a particular Chinese company, who's the real culprit and who's the accomplice, whether Australia is the true whisperer, as someone here claimed to be, or is it just a charlatan as is teased by my people back in China? So coming to your question of our relationship, it is very simple. We hope we will all honor the commitment to comprehensive strategic partnership. We should respect each other's sovereignty and refrain from interfering in others' internal affairs, undermining the other's mode of governance, or try to stop the other's way path, or change the other way's path to development. Secondly, we should all observe the principle and guidelines in the Charter and provide. The government is entrusted to provide a fair and just and non-discriminatory business environment to our businesses. So what happened over the past few years? A number of investment bids were vetoed by your government branch. And thirdly, we should value our friendship between our peoples, and no obstacle should be laid intentionally to obstruct normal people-to-people exchange programs. It's very simple. As long as the Australian side will be able to do that, I don't see any obstacle for the resumption of a normal state of our relationship. Thank you, Andrew.